All right, I think I'll get started, and I'm sure some others will continue to join. But hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chorus Forum on Research Data Management in Action, helping to address the challenges of providing practical approaches for all stakeholders. Today's forum will run until 12:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and will also be recorded for later viewing. Today's event would not be possible without the generous sponsorship coming from AIP Publishing and STM. Today's forum will be governed by our code of conduct so we can have a positive experience for all participants. So please do not engage in harassment of any kind. Do not post anything that a reasonable person would consider offensive, abusive, or hate speech. Do not post anything obscene or sexually explicit. Do not impersonate people and do not expose private information. So first, a little bit about us. Chorus is a not-for-profit community effort creating a future where the output flowing from funded research is easily and permanently discoverable, accessible, and verifiable by anyone in the world. We aim to make open research work. Our stakeholders are funders, institutions, publishers, service providers, and implicitly, researchers and the public. We do so by following our four goals of helping our stakeholders enhance their OA compliance, improve their metadata quality, help drive their data as a first-class citizen, and connect our stakeholders to build trust. Specifically, we deliver dashboards and reports, monitor for open access on publisher sites, provide links to publishers, agency portals, and grants, connecting data sets to content, participate in open research pilots, and yes, host webinars and meetings like today. So today our focus is about data and how to manage it. So over to my good colleague, Bob Hainish, to kick us off.
Well, thank you so much, Howard. And on behalf of the RDaF team, I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. If you go ahead to the next slide, Howard. The overall agenda for today is here. I'll be giving you a sort of high-level introduction to the Research Data Framework. And with a little help from Ava, we'll talk about how you can actually navigate the online research data framework. Sadly, owing to the government shutdown, the online interactive version is not currently working, but we do have a few video presentations to show you what it looks like. We'll take a short break to see if there are any questions at that point, and then we have some implementation examples. And then we had planned to do some breakout sessions. We'll see if we have sufficient people by that point in time to go to the breakouts. As a fallback, we might just pick one or maybe two of them, but we'll see how that goes. And then we'll have some time at the end to get your feedback and to offer some advice for the future. So let's go ahead to the next one. Just to introduce ourselves, I'm Robert Hanish. I go by Bob. I retired earlier this year from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, where I was the director of the Office of Data and Informatics. And in my office, we led the Research Data Framework project. Andrea Medina Smith, who was at that time a data librarian in the NIST Research Libraries, has since joined Sage Publishing, but she has been instrumental in the development of the RDaF over most of the time that we worked together. Eva Campo, founder and CEO for Campostella Research and Consulting, also provided excellent assistance in the development of the RDaF. And we are joined as well by Catherine Stoller-Peters from the State University of New York, Office of Research, Innovation, and Economic Development, who led the deployment of the RDaF across the State University of New York campuses. So we'll hear from her about her implementation experiences and work with benchmarking. So going ahead, what can you expect from today's webinar? First of all, a general familiarity with the Research Data Framework, things like the profiles, which define the kinds of roles and responsibilities that people have in research data support, how to use the RDaF for benchmarking and for use planning. We have planned a breakout on profile development. How do you develop a profile which is tailored to you or your institution? How do you use the RDaF for benchmarking, and how do you use it for making future plans? And finally, how to use the RDaF for community building. How can you build connections across your organization and across the research data community more broadly to foster knowledge sharing and to develop some spaces for continued collaboration. So next slide. So go right into the overview. So what do we mean? What is a research data framework? I like to think of the RDaF as a map of the research data space, the who, what, where, when, why, etc. Um, an atlas, a road atlas. A road atlas does not tell you exactly how to get from point A to point B, but it offers you options. You might want the scenic route, you might want the direct route, you might want a toll road, you might not. So think of the research data framework as equivalent to a roadmap. It's really intended to be a dynamic guide for the various stakeholders in research data management to help them understand best practices for research data management and dissemination. Dynamic in the sense that it can be highly tailored to an individual or that individual's institution and organizational constraints. It's also intended as a resource for understanding the costs, benefits, and risks associated with research data management. And when we talk about risks, it's largely about the risk associated with not doing comprehensive research data management. And it's really important to realize that the RDaF is a consensus document based on inputs and conversations that we had at NIST amongst the stakeholders in research data. This is not a standard. This is not NIST dictating in any way what organizations should or should not do. It is NIST consolidating what we hear, what we heard from the community. So this is the community speaking to the community. This is not NIST speaking to the community. The link here is to the main RDaF page. We'll have other repeats of this link later on so that you can easily find the starting page for the RDaF. So let's go ahead. Why did we undertake this at NIST? Well, you may be familiar with other frameworks produced by NIST, cybersecurity, AI, privacy. And so it's sort of in the culture of NIST to develop these frameworks to help our communities do their jobs better and to understand best practices. The research data ecosystem is complicated. There are lots of players, lots of activities, various funding models, various sustainability plans. There is no single guideline on how long to keep data. There's no single guideline on how to measure data quality. And there's no single guideline on how to measure the value of research data. These are all very dynamic, changing, and some of these things are actually quite difficult to measure. Nevertheless, this framework gives a starting point. It gives um, information about what various organizations are doing, how they do it, and what have been emerging as generally as best practices. So that's why we undertook this effort at NIST, and I think already we're seeing that it has proved to be a valuable resource for a number of organizations. So going ahead. What do we see as the benefits of the research data framework? Well, we want to maximize research integrity through high data quality and improve the transparency of the research process. We want to reduce costs and maximize efficiency by establishing best practices for data management. We want to help organizations understand how to manage risk through assessment of their positions and identify roadmaps for improvement. And we want to increase scientific discovery and innovation through the maximum take-up of the FAIR principles, FAIR standing for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, so that we see much better utilization of research data, uses in ways that go beyond the original intention of the scientists, the researchers who collected that data. So going on from here, I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Andrea Medina Smith, at this point to talk more about the actual structure of the Research Data Framework and talk a bit more about the background.
Thank you, Bob. So the structure of RDaF within the publication is we've got 5 chunks. First is the framework foundation, and that's broken out into 6 different life cycle stages. And each of the life cycle stages has topics and subtopics. So it's broken down so that you can not swallow the whole frog, as it were. You can go in and look just at use and reuse if you're, say, a librarian, or if you are a provost, maybe Envision is the life cycle stage that would be most appropriate to the work you've been doing. For each life cycle stage, we also have informative references and definitions for each. So that bibliography of references and resources is approximately 2,000 sites or 2,000 different references. So we have tried to capture a huge swath of the research and work that's gone on in this discipline and brought it to you within the RDaF. Next up, we have the methodology, where we talk about, how did we go about creating the topics and subtopics? They were based on stakeholder input from a variety of workshops and an RFI that NIST put out. We have overarching themes because between version 1 and version 1.5, we realized that there were lots of topics and subtopics that would return again and again in various life cycle stages. So we took those topics and compiled them into the overarching themes so that you can see the connections that cross all of the different life cycle stages. Next up, we have generic profiles. So these are sample profiles based on a general role that will help you start to create your own profile or to understand where people in academic administration, what their view of the RDaF might be, or curation. We also have funders, IT administration. So we've got about, how many of those do we have now? 9 or 10?
I think there are 8 or 9. I don't remember either.
We'll learn about more of that when we do the hands-on portion of this workshop. Finally, we have a list of key organizations that have played big roles in the research data management space. All right, next slide, please. So the RDaF history, it began in mid-2019, a lifetime ago, it feels like, where the steering committee was established. There was a scoping workshop in December of 2019. And then from there, we have worked and released 3 different versions. Version 1, which was the basic scoping review taken from the workshop in 2019. And then to build upon that, we had broad stakeholder workshops in late 2021, where we did a horizontal or cross-cutting community, which would have been universities, and they touch on every portion of the life cycle, but across an institution. And then we also did a workshop with what we called the vertical, which was discipline-based, and we used material science. The great thing we learned from those 2 workshops is that there wasn't going to be a need for a different RDaF based on the discipline you were in. We learned that the the needs of all of these groups touched upon the same things so that we could have one RDaF, different profiles, because there were going to be different views into the document and the framework, but that we could create one that helped everyone out. From there, we conducted specific stakeholder workshops based on roles in mid 2022. 23, we released version 1.5. We did much more refinement and an expansion, like I said, a huge expansion of the references, and version 2 was finally released in February of 2024. And it was at that point in time we also released the online version of the framework. Next slide. Like I said, RDaF is broken up into 6 stages, starting with envision and ending with preserve discard. This is a circle. For a long time, we had arrows pointing in one direction, and then we realized, well, we all know that when you look at a data lifecycle stage, it's super simplified when it's got arrows. But our arrows needed to go between each and every one of these life cycles in 2 directions, and it made it very cluttered. So this is a super simplified version of the life cycle of any research data project. All of these can be shuffled because you might be doing the work in a different order, for better or worse. But we know that a full life cycle is going to touch on each and every one of these stages. Next page. Finally, we worked with lots of different stakeholders on this project, everyone from government agencies to the general public. My husband was also a librarian, but doesn't work with research data at all. Got to do a lot of review of this as well. Gave lots of great feedback. But, folks working with research data, it's just a huge gamut of people who work with it. Everyone from libraries to national laboratories, funders have a stake in this. The industry and the private sector all have a stake. So we wanted to create a document that stakeholders from any industry and any part of the discipline could find a foothold in and use RDaF in a way that was useful to them. Next slide. So we've got the topics and subtopics. You can see along the left-hand side of this table, we have the topic along with its definition. 40 is a footnote to the references. There's then the subtopics with their definitions and informative references. This was produced really, and vetted by the stakeholder groups in 2022 between versions 1.0 and 1.5. Next slide, please. All right, so why is this important to me? Well, myself, as a data librarian, I want to have insight into how various roles at my institution are using research data. How are they touching the research data management process? And for me, I was able to go through and say, all right, well, in this stage, these topics are important to this group. What's my relationship with this group? In the use and reuse stage, my relationships with researchers and other librarians are at the forefront. How can I support and build out those relationships? So hopefully through using RDaF, you can better understand your own role and discover the important connections, tools, and technologies within your own institution and outside of it to make your research data management stronger. All right, next up. If you're interested in knowing more, we have a link to the, again, to the top level NIST program page on RDaF. Right now, we would have you contact Ava. She is working hard on continuing this project and building out implementations. So yeah, we are looking for potential partner organizations. The QR code here will go directly to rdaf.nist.gov, which is the online version of the tool. Currently, because of the shutdown, that is down. Hopefully, when the shutdown ends, it will come right back up for us. Next slide. There are so many people that we can thank from this project. So we have the entire NIST project team. and consultants. We have the steering committee, which was fantastic in steering us in the right direction. The NIST Material Measurement Laboratory, where the Office of Data and Informatics sits, was incredibly supportive. And then there's, 300 other folks whose names we couldn't fit on here that gave comments, came to workshops, and helped us out tremendously. Next up. All right, Ava, would you like to run the video?
Ava, you want to do it and speak to it, Ava? I've got it queued up. So,
Please go ahead.
okay. So, great. I will share this. And again, since the online interactive version of the RDaF is currently not functioning, we have a short video. I'm going to show you an excerpt from it. Ava did this with the help of some AI tools, and it was really for the purpose of the curator profile, but I just want to show you a bit of it so that you can see how the online version works.
We point to the main summary page and then navigate to the RDaF web application. The summary of the Research Data Framework can be found at the top. A brief description of the RDaF can be found at the bottom of the page, as well as 2 videos by Dr. Robert Hanisch, Director of the Office of Data and Informatics at NIST and creator of the RDaF. The summary section contains links to the RDaF publication version 2.0, to the RDaF web application, and to 2 appendixes. One with an extensive collection of over 1,000 references supporting the RDaF, and another with a collection of curated profiles. Navigate to the web application. This is the home page of the app, hosted at NIST. The menu on the left lists links to terminology, lifecycle stages, topics, subtopics, overarching themes, profiles, and references. Access the Profiles section and select the Curator profile from the drop-down menu and click Search. Navigate to the Curator profile. View the detailed definition of the Curator profile. At this stage, the app lists lifecycle stages with associated topics and subtopics, as well as subtopic definitions and links to informative references. By selecting a particular lifecycle stage, we can visualize the associated collection of topics and their definition. Similarly, any topic is associated with a collection of subtopics describing the curator's profile. The guide covered accessing the RDaF curator profile by exploring definitions, lifecycle stages, topics, and subtopics related to data curation. The RDaF team hopes this guide enhances your understanding of data curation processes and roles within the application. For further questions, please contact us at rdaf@nist.gov or at robert.hanisch@nist.gov. In this demo, we will
Okay, so those last links won't work anymore, but let me see if I can find the stop sharing. Here we go. So that gives you a very quick view of what the online version looks like. The power of the online version is that you can very quickly explore links from topics to subtopics, the associated definitions, the associated references, the overarching themes, the profiles. The document itself, which is available as a PDF, is quite a little bit daunting at well over 200 pages. So we do recommend the online version once it returns to being alive as a way to much more dynamically explore the RDaF and all of the connections. So I think we can go back to the main presentation, Howard. And we have a few implementation efforts to share with you. And again, I'll turn it back to Andrea.
Thanks, Bob. So the 2 that I will speak about are the Digital Research Alliance of Canada and also University of West Virginia. The Digital Research Alliance of Canada was a bleeding edge implementation effort. Their institution supports digital research infrastructure in Canada, so everything from research data management to the nationwide cloud infrastructure and the like. And they used RDaF 1.0 to assess their progress within this space. They created scorecards from the topics and subtopics. And at that point in time, we met with their project leads and incorporated the lessons learned. So they had a lot of questions about, well, what exactly did you mean? And so at that point in time, we added in the definitions for each of the topics and subtopics so that everyone would be working from the definition we assumed they would be working from. Since then, they've gone on, and I believe they've done this one more time just to see if they'd had any improvement. Next up. The University of West Virginia and their Research Data Technology and Services group basically took the RDaF as a whole and incorporated it into their website. So if you are looking for information on on RDM at West Virginia University, you'll be diving right into RDaF. You can go through the life cycle stages as they have created them. They've chunked it into 4 groups, and then go in and look at the category or topic, and they've set it up as questions for PI consideration. So in this way, I'm hoping that they are actually working through these questions with their PI or with the people who are coming to consult with them. But it could be a self-serve system as well, where you go in and you can answer questions or think about the questions for your team. And so those are our 2 implementations besides SUNY, and we're going to have Catherine talk about the great work she's done at SUNY.
Thanks, Andrea. My name is Catherine Stoller-Peters. I work at the State University of New York in the Office of Research, Innovation, and Economic Development. And today I'd like to share with you a little bit about what my colleague and I, Bridget Almas, who used to be in the State University of New York in this office and has moved on. She was really, a visionary in creating what we're sharing today, and our amazing intern who took something that was conceptual and used proprietary libraries to something that's open and can be reused. Next slide, please. And then the next slide. And then the next slide. The State University of New York system is one of the largest university systems in the United States, and it's largest in terms of institutions. We have 64 institutions from community colleges all the way up to R1s and medical schools. Next. The research we conduct across the SUNY system comprises about $1.4 billion annually, and we support over 3,400 principal investigators. My office is on the state side, and we think about research strategically across the system. The SUNY Research Foundation is an independent nonprofit, and they are the ones who support the actual program administration across SUNY. Next. Around 2020, we were faced with quite a few questions from the Research Foundation, from SUNY Chancellor and executives, as well as our campus colleagues about data management and sharing plans. And there was increased interest about research data services and research data management and what we were doing to support our researchers who were kind of navigating some new requirements related to open science and supporting open data movements. We also were able to receive $200 million from the state of New York to rethink the way that we conduct our work and to envision some digital transformation projects. Those things combined together allowed us to, 1, start a research data management task group at the system, but really comprised of 10 of our research-intensive campuses. It allowed us to support the creation of a research data repository project, which I'll describe in a minute. And it allowed us to start asking some real questions about the institutional readiness, both at the system and on campuses, to support research data services. We did an environmental scan. We talked to our campuses and researchers, and we found that we, like probably many of you on this call, needed resources. We needed technical infrastructure. We needed recommendations, models, and frameworks. We needed to define the roles and responsibilities of various groups on campus, including researchers, IT, libraries. And we also wanted to build collaborative data communities so that we weren't doing this independently. Next. This is the slide about the research data repository that we're building. The repository itself is technical infrastructure, but around it, we didn't want the technology to stand alone. We knew that we needed to build this broader research data services community, and the RDaF has helped us to envision what activities we should do to support that community. It's helped us reframe a survey that we're sending out to colleagues on campuses to determine where they are in each of these stages, or supporting where they are in envisioning their work with the RDaF. It's helpful. This research data repository is also where we're centering our questions about how do we support AI curation for a data set publishing? How can we create data sets that can be used in AI applications? How do we support data sets that are created for independent AI research like synthetic data? And the RDaF is really the glue that holds all of these conversations together. Next. So as Bob and Andrea and Ava described, the RDaF allows a look at various lifecycle stages in research data creation management. What I love about the RDaF and the work of all of the people who contributed to developing this open model is that there's an envision stage. Most of the time, life cycle mapping about research data starts at the plan, at the project level. We really needed to look at something broader at the institution, or for us, the system level, to start kind of answering questions about where do we even begin this process? Next. We found amazing existing documentation and practices and projects. Like Andrea, I'm a librarian. The first thing we went to was the literature that existed, and we found really great tools, but many of them were either discovering what needs there are in research data services, defining what standard outcomes should be, so what should an RDM offering supply or offer, but we really had a hard time connecting where we wanted to go and where we were today, and developing that institutional readiness to support research data services. Next. For us, we wanted to look at this institutional readiness, help us do some program assessment, help us think about communicating needs for research data management, as well as other potential use cases like planning individual research projects, doing some graduate training about RDM, visualizing overarching themes, and then kind of thinking about a glossary for these terms. RDaF can be useful for all of this. Next. For us, we really wanted to take what exists in, at that time, the RDaF interactive tool wasn't available. We wanted to take what existed in the RDaF model and make it actionable. Next. But before we could make it actionable, there were a couple of things we wanted to work through. One was that the RDaF itself has topics, and the topics and subtopics are actually interspersed categories. We were interested in outcomes, activities, considerations, and milestones to support research data services, and we we were also interested in the interconnectedness between participant roles and each of those things. Very similar to what Andrea mentioned. If you put arrows all over the RDaF lifecycle, they're intertwined. And there's a tool that we built to kind of share this. Next. Connections were key to our work, so we built a data model that demonstrates those connections. Next. This is the documentation of my colleague Bridget Almus. The black is what started in RDaF, and the blue is what we created in initially a spreadsheet and has been repopulated into a graph model that is available on GitHub that I will show you in just a minute. Next. We had to add some new categories to the RDaF. That's kind of the SUNY flavor. When you look at the slides later, you can see these categories. Next. And this is what the tool looks like. So if we can stop sharing, I can share with you my screen and give you the link for this in the chat so that you can experiment. We do have time in the breakout sessions to do this work as well. But I'm going to start by showing you what this looks like. Are you all able to see my screen? Maybe just a yes.
It's coming. Yep. Thanks.
Perfect. Very good. This is the RDaF Explorer prototype, the SUNY RDaF Explorer prototype. This is built it's open. It's using open libraries that are shown in GitHub. There's a wiki that you can click on to find all of the data models behind it. This links to the NIST RDaF framework that we are indebted to all of you and your colleagues to record all of these components of research data management in a way that we could extrapolate into this tool. The tool itself allows you to take each one of the stages, and if you click on it, you will see various outcomes, subtopics from the RDaF and topics of the RDaF that allow you to divide up kind of the work that you may need to do to support research data services along each stage. I'm starting with the envision stage because that's really where we spent most of our time at SUNY. From this envision stage, we created a way for you to capture your own work in each of these. So in order to support, let's say, the importance of data governance, let's look at the legal and regulatory compliance level. In order to support that, there's a number of outcomes that we are suggesting from the RDaF that you should complete. You should note that data governance policies exist. And in this tool, you can say, we haven't started this before, it's in progress, or it's achieved. And I'd love to see anybody who has achieved all of this because I honestly feel that they're all in progress and we can always kind of work a little bit more. As you go through, you can think about ethically conducted research. If you've completed a data set inventory, is there a data services inventory? Through all of this, as you click through, you can save what you've done and export an Excel spreadsheet to note where you've achieved things. If you're having some problems thinking about how to achieve this outcome, there are activities that are linked that will help you do that work based on the RDaF subtopics, or there's considerations that you may just keep in the back of your mind that are also kind of specific RDaF subtopics. This tool can be used in a lot of ways, and there's a couple of that I mentioned previously. I look forward to looking at this in our breakout session or later on, but I'd like us to keep moving along in the webinar.
Let me just say from the perspective of the former NIST team, we were just very, very pleased to see the work that Catherine and Bridget did at SUNY, taking the RDaF as a launching point and optimizing it for their use case. We were just super impressed with the work done there. And we would love to see others take the RDaF and adapt it as it suits their particular situations. So I think we can go back to, oh, we're back in the main slide deck. So I think we should take just a brief pause here to see if, before we go into breakouts, and maybe we might have to think about that given the relatively small number of people, but are there questions or comments that people in the audience would like to put forward at this point? And you'd be happy to do that in the chat, or if you want to come on camera and turn on your microphone, we would love to hear any questions or comments you might have at this point. And don't be shy.
I would like to comment a little bit, if it's okay with you.
Please, please.
So I'm a data librarian at WashU Medicine, and I joined the library, right before the new NIST DMS policy went into effect. So it was a huge deal. We got a lot of requests for, helping them write a DMSP and all. But now that policy has been out for 2 years and going into implementation stage, people are more interested in how to manage and share. We also have an institutional data repository. So a lot of them, come to us because it's generalist repository. And we are a little unique because we provide both open and restricted access. We have a lot of sensitive biomedical data, so it makes sense to provide restrict access because they don't have a lot of options. I'm very interested in this one, and I know a lot of there are other better known data lifecycle, like RD and KIT is one, and then Harvard also has a data lifecycle. Yours is unique because you added another stage for preserve discard, because I don't think they talk about that much. Usually, envision or plan, and then you collect and either process, analyze, and share and reuse, and that's where it ends. But we don't really talk much about discard, how long we can keep. But in the absence of a real policy regulation, how do we navigate this one? And this one is very complex. I'm super impressed with what SUNY did. I attended earlier version of it. At the time, it wasn't complete yet, but it looks like it's more complete. And I really love the way it kind of gives you outcomes and consideration and everything, but it's a complicated. And the researchers do not have a lot of time, and they want simple solution. I mean, they would probably do the minimum they need to do. They want us to hold hands. I do a lot of consultation. So it's like how do we how do we make this more usable by researchers? I mean, I as a data librarian, I'm super interested, and I will use it as a reference tool when I do an individual consultation or webinar. But I just can't envision. We do actually have a separate DMS website. We built it, in preparation for new NIST DMS policy. I could put this into general research data management subtab, but then will they actually use it? Researchers, that's my biggest concern. How do we make it as simple as possible so they can say, oh, I can click on it? RDaF Kit is actually reasonably simple enough, and I do use that as a reference a lot when I do give a consultation webinar, because you just click on each row and then they can kind of digest. It's more digestible, easily digestible. This one, just intimidating, looks more complicated. It's more thorough for sure, but it's very intimidating. And I don't think it's gonna bode well with the researchers when I try to tell people, hey, go and check it out. You know what I'm saying? That's my concern. And I'd like to hear what others think about this issue.
Yeah, well, and I might ask my librarian colleagues to come on, since they deal with data preservation and disposal issues all the time in their decision making. It is complicated, it is extensive, and that's why it took us over 5 years to build a comprehensive system. The one thing, and maybe Catherine can comment on this, is that we see the RDaF as a vehicle for establishing communication that didn't exist before. You bring different people with their different stakeholders to the same table to have those discussions on how do we make the decision on what to keep, how long to keep it. What do we look at in terms of metrics? Is the data being used? Does it have a potential for reuse in a different context? All those conversations need to come to light. And yeah, for an individual researcher to navigate the entirety of the RDaF, it would certainly be intimidating. But from an institutional perspective, if you start those conversations, this can hopefully percolate through an organization. So not everybody has to know everything. And let me shut up, and because Catherine and Andrea have a lot more experience with making those sorts of curation decisions than I do.
I'm just curious how you get all the stakeholders to come to the table and then cooperate to build something like this, because we're going to need input from so many different people within our university, and I just can't imagine how they agree to do this stuff like that, and they're not going to have all the policies in place either. So there are a lot of missing pieces to build something like this. So I'd like to hear your experience, how you made this happen. I'm very curious.
I think that's you, Catherine.
Yeah, I can speak to the SUNY experience, and I'm just going to go back to that statement that I don't think that the full suite has happened. I think that we're building to that. So I really do feel that we're always in progress. And for me, the way to get any leverage or momentum on this is really executive support. So someone, someone has to be the champion at the president or provost level, or wherever, to note that data really is the currency of the future. That as we think that scholarly output is publications today, especially in the medical field, data is really what the output of scholarly work will be, and not just scholarly work, but industry work as well. So I was just speaking with the co-lead on our research data repository project, who noted that with AI, by 2027, something like 75% of the bots on the web will actually be scraping data, and they're actually about to, eat themselves without the need for more data, to be shared. So there's an increased thirst for data that I think libraries will be central to making what is offline or hidden in different systems actually available, to share, to support that work, and to support open science. In terms of the questions about, so that was kind of the question about how do you bring the right people to the table. When we did our early environmental scan conversations and we brought up this tool and we started clicking through, people's eyes were glazing over. Going through the tool in an online, 90-minute session is overwhelming, and the things start kind of moving off the screen, and that's not especially useful. What I think is useful is your question related to discard. If you were to absorb the content of the RDaF, and if you were to absorb the bits of discard and then start answering maybe what we've presented in the scorecard, are these things completed? What do we need to do for the next step for discard? I would use it internally for that tool. And honestly, part of our work was to say, research data services and research data management is overwhelming. This tool is overwhelming, and we need a large group to come together and try to solve it collaboratively. The last thing I wanted to mention about discard is my good colleague and friend who used to be at the University of Michigan wrote, made, if we're talking about published materials discard, not active data sets that were used by the PI before it was actually published. If you're talking about something that goes into your data repository, that I think part of the submission information agreement needs to have a data destruction component to it. So at 10 years, we will evaluate whether or not this is used, or at 10, some port of like records management kind of built into the SIP agreement, or deposit agreement. My good friend at Michigan, who works on this, said that they have not at the moment had to invoke that, but that at least they started the conversation that we're not keeping this permanently for you. So I think it was a great question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. It has to be at the, like, we have something called the Office of Vice Chancellor for Research, and they have to be on board to, do something like that. But it's a great reference point. I would go in and then see all these things. If I have a discussion with each stakeholder, I would probably refer to that. It's good to have something like that. And usually repository will have a retention policy, and the university also has a retention policy for data. And there's a federal requirement, there's a state requirement. So for DMS policy, it has to be at least I think it's 3 years, and WashU requires 6 years, but we guarantee 10 years. I think we can afford that. And after that, we have to reevaluate whether we can afford it, depending on the volume of the data we get. It's just skyrocketing, demand for data deposition. Nowadays, even publishers are demanding. They won't even send the manuscript for review unless you make your data deposit into the repository and then give us a DOI. That's the requirement. And a lot of journals won't even publish unless that DOI is active live. So the culture is changing. It's not just the funders demanding, the publishers are getting on board about making data available publicly through repository, not data available upon request. That doesn't fly anymore. So, it's good to see that. It's really good to see that. But we're getting a lot of urgent requests. Hey, I need my data deposited and get DOI tonight. Yes. I have to submit.
Let me
Go
ask
ahead.
Andrea to comment briefly because, in fact, she's working on a PhD dissertation at the moment that is looking into the impact of the open science and open data policies, and retention must be an issue to be concerned with there as well.
It is so the public access policies that were developed between 2013 and 2015 weren't thinking about it. It was just get everything out there. And to be honest, I'm not sure that any of the adjustments or evolutions to those policies really have been thinking about it. So from a personal side, I got into data librarianship because I was an archivist. And a lot of the questions that were being asked of data were things that archivists had already answered for archival materials. And it's almost as if we just never got to the preservation or the disposition stage with data. I would say that is like ripe for research and digging into in a way that some of the other questions have been answered. But dissolution of records for data has really not been touched yet. So Sun-Young, you've got a place. You can research this. You can make the best practices and tell everybody about them.
Okay, here's what I would say to that. So for sensitive data, usually that requires informed consent, like a human subject, they usually have a plan for discard. They're supposed to discard, and they have to actually specify how they're going to discard. If it's a physical thing, you shred or whatever. But it's like a basic science research has no clear picture of how long to keep, what to keep, when to discard, and how to discard. And that's a kind of conversation we really should have, because it costs money to keep keep this storage platform and then repository running. We can't keep all the raw data forever. Perpetual, preservation is not practically possible. So it's a conversation we have to have at some point. NIST as a policy, when you write a plan, they ask you, when it be available, when data will be available, how long will it be available? So, something you have to put it in writing. I just refer to, according to the retention policy of repository, that covers it all. And then I don't have to say specifically, and it covers by the repository, because you have to make your data available in data repository. But typically, most data repository will keep the data at least 5 years, or a lot of times 10 years, but rarely perpetual availability. But you have to be a little cautious about that.
I think it depends on the repository. There's a lot of repositories that don't say how long they're going to keep stuff yet. They're having those conversations in the background, or there's repositories like from the US, federal repositories. If it is a federal record, which some data is, they,
Right.
the retention schedule is life of the republic plus 50 years. So, I mean, that's essentially in perpetuity.
We hope.
In our
Touch wood.
lifetime, yeah.
So I think again, this is just somewhere that we've finally got enough stuff that like, oh, now we need to be having the discussions about, well, what are we going to do with this stuff in 5 years? And how are we going to assess what's happened with it, if it is still useful?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
how do you tell somebody 10 years in that your stuff isn't actually useful and nobody's using it, so we're going to get rid of it if you didn't have that discussion at the beginning?
Right.
So
Yeah. It's it's ongoing discussion for sure. And I mean, since ours is an institutional repository, we're not open to everybody, so we can manage to keep their data. Once they deposit, we're not going to destroy it. We have an archival system, so it's a perpetual in that sense, because we're not going to destroy it. But how do we keep them active in a way, depending on the demand? In open access, anybody can download anytime. It's restricted access, it's just something we have to think about. Okay, I see the hands up.
Yeah, so Jennifer, let me just say before you go ahead, Jennifer, I think given the time and given the number of people here, we should continue mostly in this discussion mode. Sun Young has raised some really interesting questions. I do want to ask Tara in the meantime to post in the chat a link to an Excel spreadsheet, which people may want to download and use for doing some profile work, some self-assessment work. It basically has all of the topics and subtopics in a spreadsheet, and an easy way to sort of go through and click on things to get a first look at where you stand. But in the meantime, let's continue with Jennifer and your question and comment, please.
Yeah, so first of all, so my name's Jennifer Beamer, and I'm over at Cal State University San Bernardino as part of the Cal State University system. And so probably as you're aware, we are not a Research One institution. We have a couple of them that are, and I have a small NSF grant to kind of look at how we don't have a data repository. And so this past year, my idea was to figure out, in light of the Nelson memo, what the heck we should do. So I applied for an NSF and humbly received one to sort of explore what actions we should take. And I really appreciate the discussion today and what you've shown, because we're very narrowly focused on how we can just share this little bit of underlying data with the papers that are being published in our system. And so I'm going to really dig deep into what you've done and try to figure out what we can do. We've already been working on a case study with our colleagues in Tokyo, the National Institute of Informatics, who have been looking at the broader aspects of saving all of the data. But I think in our capacity of just looking at the little bit of data we can save, and then in the hopes of creating a culture over the next however many years it takes us to save all the data. But I think using your framework, I guess I don't really have a question, but just wanting to say thank you so much for all of this. I really appreciate. I'm a lurker at many course events, and particularly today, I'm just taking all the notes and I'm appreciating the links. And I thank you so much for doing this. Yes, it is a project with Andrew Weiss. So I'm the PI, and then what I did is I had everybody apply as participants, because I grew up as a synchronized swimmer, in fact, and I hate doing things by myself. So I like the team of everybody standing on top of each other and doing all the things as a side note. Yes, I don't see this as, because of the lack of resources, I don't see this as a project that only one CSU could do. I saw it more as a centralized project. We also too have one open access repository that we've had for 15 years. And so it makes sense to sort of have this as a centralized project, especially because I think, at last look, we have like just 100,000, papers, but I think, out of that, I don't even know if I dug a little deep here. I think like 50,000 of those are open access. So as more of them become open, in light of the Nelson memo, and maybe I should be calling it the public access to taxpayer-funded research memo, then I think this is going to sort of ramp up. And already we're dealing with these kinds of issues. And I am one of the only Spark institution members. So I have been all of my career as a librarian. And I'm also the visiting program officer for the US Repository Network. So I'm like a super activist around all of these things. So I'm totally getting everybody to do this. But again, I really am going to dig into this, and I may reach out to some of you to ask some more questions, because I'm super appreciative. Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm super appreciative of this framework as we are sort of digging into very many of us are ScholComm librarians, so this is one piece of what we're doing along with OER, etc. And I will stop talking now in case other people have things, because I'm just taking over. But thank you so much, and happy Open Access Week. I really appreciate this topic this week. It's one of the best ones I've attended, so thank you so much.
No problem.
Well, that's
So I actually have a
really,
couple questions for you. Have you worked with either the MLA collections? I can't remember the name of their repository, but there's a few groups that have been looking at humanities data. And not that all of your work is in the humanities at all, but humanities data is often coming out of smaller liberal arts colleges, and somebody there may have done it, or may have started the work that you guys are doing as well.
Yes, and we've been trying to be very broad in looking and being very inclusive as well, because we are not totally focused. Again, that's the pushback we get in, like, oh, we're not all just STEM people, so please include. So yes, I have been digging into that, and that's also the benefit of having broad coverage of people. Not only just one institution looking. So, and the Andrew Weisses of the world too. So fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning and asking.
I just shared the dataset catalog. Just take a look, and that's a good one to go into browse, because it's data.
Yeah, and version 2 of the RDaF has a list of organizations that are involved in research data management, both from technical perspective, programmatic, policy. And, one of the strongest entities or suite of entities are domain-specific repositories who will, I think of ICPSR for, political science and social science. They've been around for over 50 years. And not only provide excellent comprehensive coverage, but they do a lot of curation of the data sets for quality. So that's another place to look for potential partnerships in data management long-term, is these domain-specific repositories.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So looking at the clock and some notes here, let me just take a moment to share a copy, a view of this spreadsheet that we put together for you. As I said, this is a list of all of the topics and subtopics throughout the RDaF. And there are three columns here that you can fill in. You can do this as an individual. You can do it thinking of your subgroup in an organization. You can do it thinking in terms of your organization as a whole. And the columns here are responsible and influence and comments. Responsible, is this a topic or a subtopic that you have some personal or organizational responsibility for? For influence, is this a topic or subtopic that you influence others in your organization, that they look to you for your opinion, they look to you for your guidance? You may not have responsibility in your job description, but you may be in a position to discuss with others and influence the roles and responsibilities that they have. And I think it's equally important to being personally responsible as to having the ability to influence others in your organization to take on those responsibilities. And then, are there any comments specific to the way this is conducted in your organization? You can say, yeah, this is my responsibility, but I'm limited in what I can do because of resources or because of policy issues or whatever. So, of course, given the complexity of the RDaF, this goes on for many, many rows, hundreds. I forget now exactly how many we have here, what, 336 rows of subtopics. So it's not something that I would suggest that you sit down and work through in a single session. You can probably, in a minute, probably ignore an entire suite of things that don't pertain to your particular job area, your responsibilities, or your influences. But in other cases, for example, if you're involved in data curation, if you're in the library, if you're in IT services, you might jump into those areas such as analysis for IT services or for provision of data management infrastructure that obviously are areas that you are responsible for or have influence over. So this is just available as a tool. It's much more simple than sort of the environment that Catherine and her colleagues have developed at SUNY, but it's an easy way to get started and to explore how you personally are engaged in research data management in your organization. So that's available for you to use as you wish. I think in view of the time and in view of the number of people, we won't actually go into the separate breakouts. I guess I'd defer to Howard and Tara if you have a different view on this, but I would say maybe we use the last 10, 15 minutes to engage in other topics of interest to people. And I see Sean Young again with her hand raised. I think you should have been part of the RDaF.
I would love to if I have time, but this is actually of my great interest. As I just work with the researchers, I realized they really do need guidance on how to manage data. It was such a shock when they had to write a data management sharing plan in 2023. It was such a shock. So we, have to guide. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to click on share. I reviewed more than 100 data management sharing plan for just NIH alone. And then sometimes I had to rewrite the whole thing because this is not usable. And then I wrote in a blog about tips for writing an NIH DMS plan to guide them through. And then, by reviewing them, I handpicked some of the good ones and then make them available through Grants Library, so that I can direct them to certain type of data similar to what they're working on. So I guess I'm a little deviating from what I wanted to say. That my question was so I'm not directly involved in managing the data or writing the plan, but I'm more like a consultant. So would that be considered influence? I'm not really directly responsible for either managing the data or any of those. I'm more like a consulting role. Sometimes I take an active role. If they're in a time crunch, it's easier for me to rewrite the whole thing than just working with them to revise and all that stuff. So yes, I'm, I guess somewhat responsible, but I don't view it as a responsibility in a way. So I'm going to have a lot of questions about if I do feel like this was, whom should I ask? I guess that was my question.
Yeah, well, again, I think this is a tool that opens up those conversations. I need to talk to you because I want to understand exactly what I'm responsible for and what influence I have. And I'm going to ask Andrea to come back on camera because she, in her role as a librarian, a metadata librarian at NIST, engaged in many conversations advising people on data management plans and on how to annotate their data for maximum discovery and reuse. Was that a responsibility or was that an influence or some of both? I think probably some of both. Andrea?
It's tricky to answer. I mean, literally, I'm curating, so I guess I'm responsible for data
Mhm.
curation. That one easy to answer. But then I work with them, and it's not like I'm doing it for them. It's sometimes it's vague. Sometimes I do it for them if it's too much to kind of teach them. But they're supposed to do it. So I'm moving to more webinar to guide them how to prepare their data for data repository, because I realize, it's just so much work. If they don't prepare their data, it's just so much work at both ends. So if I teach them ahead of time, as they're collecting the data, do it right from the beginning. Then by the time you are supposed to or you're ready to share, it makes it so much easier. I don't know if you guys saw the Shinafu video, a lot of you have probably seen it. It just covers so well, what could go wrong if you don't manage your data well. So, you have to, if you want to share the data, which you are required now, you have to manage your data from the beginning when you collect them. So it's it's a lot of work to be done. And I'd be happy to discuss more. And, when you have time, it'd be great to talk more about this.
Yeah, Andrea, go ahead. I'm sure you have an observation about this.
I mean, really, it is both. It depends on what your role is within that one particular research group. Generally, I like to think that I influenced how they were going to write their data management plan. At NIST, the only thing we would provide would be like a stub that they needed to then fill out farther. And one of the tricks to getting them to fill it out a little farther, when you had a good relationship, is to put something like clearly not right in it. And if you knew they were going to read it and go into it, if you put something a little wrong, they typically would, really want to correct that. But if you are a member of the research team because you have been brought on as a detail where they're, paying for part of your time as a librarian, or because you're just a member of that lab, I think you'd have more responsibility for it as somebody in a curation role. But generally, at least at NIST, it was an influence.
Well, I'm not in a lab, I'm in a data manager sharing services team under Becker Library. So my role is a consultation, basically. I have a more direct role in like curating the data set because I'm a curator for institutional data repository. So, and sometimes, they'll put me as an author for contributor to the data set if I'm heavily involved in curation and metadata and stuff. So, and so data management sharing plan is a 10,000 foot level. It doesn't go into the details. It can't. It's 6 elements. It's just really broad kind of roadmap to how you're going to manage and share your data. But when you actually do generate the data and prepare, manage, and share, you need a lot more granular level of details and then guidance in a way. So that's where I come in. Like I have to give individual consultation or lab. I go into the lab and give a lab meeting. Which I'm about to do. So I'm doing a lot of those micro webinar in-person training on how to manage their data so that by the time they have to share, it'll be a lot easier for them and for us as well. But it's just, and then selecting a repository is another big thing because, I build like a decision tree. So how to select a data repository. So if your NOFO defines a repository, you go there first. You have no choice. But if they don't, there's like a disease-specific repository, organism-specific repository, you go there next. If not, and then you choose a domain-specific repository, and that's the preferred repository. If not, then you go to generalist repository. If you're lucky enough to have an institutional data repository, go there. If not, you use a GRAY, for example. NIH has a 6 GRAY repository, Harvard Dataverse, Riot, Figshare, Open Science, framework. A lot of choices, and then they did a great job of putting together resources and making available. So, that's another thing. So I guess that's not responsible. I'm influencing on their decision in a way, right? So it's I think there should be another category for this one. So I'm kind of struggling how to answer these questions.
Indispensable, I would say, maybe is the right category.
There you go. There you go. They rely on me on many things. I like that.
One thing I would just add in my role, my former role at NIST as the director of the Office of Data and Informatics, I was an infrastructure provider. And in order to address this issue of making data management ingrained and as easy as possible, I saw it as my main job to provide the infrastructure and the tools that as soon as data is acquired in digital form, it's already annotated with the necessary metadata. Everything needed to know how to use that data and reuse that data is there because it's automatically collected from the instrument. You don't depend on the experimenter to hand key in all sorts of metadata because they won't do it, or if they do it, they'll get it wrong. So you've got to automate this process as much as possible. With the advent of, advanced AI, you can imagine that a lot of that can be further automated by, the computers understanding the context. And all of these things will make the data availability, discoverability, and reusability much, much more beneficial in the future. But you do,
Right.
as an infrastructure provider, need to think about how to make this as straightforward, as simple for the investigators as possible. And your
Right.
role is taking a broad view of the breadth of the kind of data coming in. Is the metadata of high quality? Is it reliable? And to help those investigators at the beginning understand why doing that is important, why it's going to have maximum impact for their data, because others will be able to cite it, reuse it, combine it in ways that go beyond the original experiment. And that's what
Right.
this whole research data management infrastructure is really aiming at: maximum
Right.
value for the data that was taken at great expense, either government or university or private sector.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Instrument usually, um, include a lot of good metadata. But the whole thing about this data sharing is make your data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable.
Yeah.
Interoperability is the one I'm trying to,
That's the hardest
emphasize
one.
because yes, because it's a lot of proprietary format that includes all
Yeah.
the metadata. So you have to convert it to open file format
Yeah.
and use
Yeah.
the community accepted standards. I'm going to
Yeah.
use the flow cytometry as an example. So
Yeah.
a lot of people use a FlowJo, but it's a proprietary format. So you
Yeah.
convert it to FCS, but doesn't have all the metadata in it. So now you have to generate, there's a NIFLOW Sci, which is a well-established standard for flow cytometry. So you have to capture that metadata separately along with the FCS file. Because the FCS file can be interoperable. It's totally interoperable. It's a standard file format. So there's a lot going on, but there's a fifth element people often forget. So even if you do FAIR, if the metadata is not sufficient, annotation isn't sufficient, it might not be analyzable in a way.
Right.
So there's a fifth element is data analyzable. You go through all this trouble and then download and everything and realize, oh my God, can I use this data? Or it's not analyzable. So metadata is just key, for reusability of data. So should probably add the fifth element, analyzable. So I just tested a tool called Fairlist, and that one has a built-in QC function using the data visitation technology. So actually use a tool to visit data, make sure data has a sufficient metadata, and then actually enhance it and give you a score. So this is sensitive data, so normally it's behind the wall, you cannot see the data. So if by giving a score, you make an informed decision. Do I bother to go through all this trouble to download or move on to the one that has a better score?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So,
yeah, I know there's been a lot of effort in the FAIR community to be quantitative about the fairness of data. It is in my view, a bit of a slippery slope. People don't like to have their data marked as poor. And, you don't want to drive data underground by saying, well, it's crappy data. But anyway, these are really, it's part of this evolving ecosystem of research data, all very important issues, many of which remain malleable and in process. But people like you are helping to push the ball forward, and I'm really glad to see how thoughtful you are about the job you're going about. And I think we're going to add a new column to this chart called indispensable, because that's where I see people like you.
That's so sweet of you. I don't know. I just like I'm gonna have a hard time answering some of the questions. Thank you.
I'm going to ask maybe Howard and Tara to come back on. We're in the last few minutes of the time allotted, and I think we've brought some really interesting issues to light. I want to certainly thank my colleagues, Andrea, Catherine, and Ava for being here today to participate. And again, this is the link to the RDaF site at NIST, which hopefully will become fully functional again once the government shutdown is over. But in the meantime, Compostela Research, here listed at the bottom, our Gmail contact. We are happy to engage with people in further discussion and development of the RDaF. We'd love to see the work done by Catherine and her colleagues at SUNY as ways to adapt the RDaF to particular institutional needs. And we'd be very interested. I don't know if Ava, you want to show your face and say, we're really happy to engage with people who are interested in improving usability of the RDaF. This is how you can get in touch with Ava. So, Howard and Tara, turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have found this particularly illuminating. I'm now seeing pathways on areas where Chorus could potentially help to push the RDaF forward. I now understand much better, thank you all, for what the RDaF is and is not. And I think that there's much more to be done. We all agree. There's much more to be done in this area. And I can certainly see how the Chorus stakeholder community could get behind this and support it. And perhaps even, in ways that NIST itself can't do anymore, just being a government organization. So I want to thank everyone for their contributions today, all the speakers as well as the people asking questions. I mean, that's what we do these things for, right? We put it out there. We put it so that, for on our back, right? You guys can have a really good conversation and we can all learn and start to see how we can all help and trust each other. So I also just want to thank our sponsors. I always have to do that. AIP Publishing and STM, who helped make this possible today. And I just a little plug for Chorus. We've always got more events coming. So have a look at our website. We've got another Japan Library Fair coming up in November, and we will have a full schedule coming out for the new year. I am confident, and perhaps we'll sneak another one in December. We'll see. So I will turn it back over to Bob for any last words, but I appreciate everything that you all have done. Thanks.
Well, let me just thank you, Howard and Tara. Your logistical support for the event today has been absolutely perfect. And I do hope that the RDaF will at least be a conversation starter for many of the people who were here today. And please do get in touch with us through Compostela if you would like us to do, on-site events, on-site trainings, etc. We are more than willing to engage in activities like that, perhaps at a bit of a price because we have to eat as well. But Ava is the brains behind Compostela, and she is more than willing to reach out to people to help with RDaF implementations and education.
I saw a question in the chat just to put a closing to this about where will the recording be and where will the slides be. Chorus always puts them on the same events page where the event itself, where you're registered. So you will be able to see that, and you will all be getting notifications about that when it's available. Usually takes us a couple of days, so look out for it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
rest of your
Thank
day.
you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
me too.
Cheers.
Tara.
Yes.